we will start and I think they will continue coming. Herkese merhaba. Susan and Scott, hello and welcome. And thank you for accepting this talk despite of your busy schedules. We are very happy to be able to host you and talk about the intricacies of actor training with you. Let me introduce you in Turkish first and then we will continue in English, okay? Merhaba herkese. Bugün Kadir Has Üniversitesi Tiyatro Bölümünde uzun zamandır ders veren ve kendi alanlarında çok deneyimli iki hocamızla sohbet etmekten dolayı çok mutluyuz. Susan May bir dönem bölümümüzün tam zamanlı hocalarından biri oldu. Sonra onu maalesef İtalya'ya kaptırdık. Kendisi Linklater Ses Eğitiminin çok deneyimli bir hocası olmakla birlikte şu anda İtalya'da Ulusal Tiyatro Okulu ile ilişkilenen ve Floransa'da bulunan Teatro della Pergola'nın müdür yardımcısı ve ses dersleri yürütücüsü. Scott Williams ise önce oyuncu olarak öğrendiği ve uyguladığı, sonra da hocası olduğu oyunculuk yöntemlerinden biri olan Meisner tekniğinin bir duayeni. Aynı zamanda kurucusu olduğu Impulse Company'nin sanat yönetmeni. O da bölümümüzde yıllardır ders vermekte. Yıllardır biz hep tabii ara ara bir araya gelip birçok sohbet yaptık ve hakikaten tadına doyum olmadı bu sohbetlerin. İkisinden de her zaman çok şey öğrendiğimizi düşünüyoruz. Bu sene neden dedik bu sohbetleri herkesle paylaşmayalım ve bu etkinlikte buluştuk. Aslında bu buluşmayı bu sohbetler dizisinin de ilki gibi düşünüyoruz. Deneyimlerinden yararlandığımız çok sayıda hocamızı burada konuk etmek istiyoruz. Çünkü özellikle bu dönemde oyunculuk eğitimi üzerine birçok farklı boyutuyla daha derinlemesine düşünme ve tartışma ihtiyacı belirmişken bu sohbet dizilerinin ilkine farklı kültürlerde eğitim veren iki eğitimciyle başlamak da açıkçası anlamlı geldi bize. Susan ve Scott'la hem genel olarak oyunculuk eğitiminin püf noktalarını ve ilkelerini hem de tüm dünyayı etkisi altına alan pandemi döneminde birer eğitimci olarak bireysel deneyimlerini, görüşlerini ve önerilerini konuşacağız. Ben sözü fazla uzatmadan sizin moderatörümüz Özlem Ösabeş ve konuklarımız Susan Main ve Scott Williams'a bırakıyorum. Önümüzdeki bir saat onlar oyunculuk eğitimine dair konuşmak istedikleri meseleleri detaylandıracaklar. Sonrasında sizin chat'e yazdığınız sorularla devam edeceğiz. Welcome again, Susan Main and Scott Williams. I leave you with your moderator, Özlem Özsabeş.
Hello,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Welcome again. It's so exciting to see you both here on Zoom with us. And we will be talking about acting, impulses, teaching, which are really your main areas, I think, and I learned a lot from both of you. So I'm really excited to moderate this talk. So my first question is quite general, but really important in this era of after Me Too movement, after all this was happening in theater education field. We want to ask you one question about the safe spaces. So how would you describe a safe space, and how does one generate a safe space to explore in which the students feel comfortable enough to go out of their comfort zones? Whoever wants to go first.
Just jumping right in. Wow, I'll just start, Scott, because I think that, hello. I think that in acting, safety means a different thing for every person and for every group and for every culture. And I think it's my job as a teacher to see who's in the room. I think safety, first and foremost, is modeled by me, by having strong boundaries as a teacher, and also by like every day challenging myself in the work. So I have to be the one exploring the work in the room and holding the space for the students. So what is really important to me is to not be on a different level, or to, like, my job is to dismantle the power habit or power structure within the work and within the room. I think that safety in acting is choice. So I think it's creating the space where the student feels free to choose if something in the work gets, I mean, the big word now is triggered. But if something comes up, or if something is very confronting or uncomfortable, that it's completely the student's decision whether they go deeply into that experience or whether they divert the energy. Something that's quite difficult on Zoom, but something I insist on in person is that you must stay in the room. So I don't say that you have to stay in the experience, but you must stay in the room, because quite a lot of the work, as we know, it's about like pushing the borders and pushing the boundaries and finding out what the actors' personal boundaries are in the work. So I think it's important to respect the physical boundary, that respecting the physical boundary helps the students to like really explore what their personal boundaries are, if that makes sense. But I think more than anything, it's choice. That's the big thing is for actors to have the choice and to not just serve the power structure in the room.
That's beautifully said. I think I love your word choice, because that puts it back into the student and puts it back into gives them agency and power. I would add one word to it, and the word I would add is respect. If one treats oneself and others with respect, I find the room is a safe place. So it's up to me as a teacher, as you say, to hold the space, Susan, in a way that in which we demonstrate respect for one another. That said, acting is a boundary pushing event. And there's a lot of conversations now that happen around that. I happen to have studied with Sanford Meisner early on in my career, and he did not make a safe space, and nor was it even thought that he should at that time. He was a brutal man, and he treated us brutally. And he was part of a generation of acting teachers that thought that was a good way to push people. I don't believe in pushing people. I believe in offering the opportunity and letting people take their own path into that. That's a safe space. And that would be how I would approach it.
Thank you both for really deep and honest answers. So then the next question after this would be, how do you encourage your students to take risks and challenge their own boundaries? And taking from your words, with their own respecting their choices and by keeping them free and safe at the same time.
I'm hoping you're going to go first, Susan, because that's a tricky question.
I know. There's a couple of ways to take that. I don't know. The first thing that's coming up in my head, and something that I say a lot, is that I should not care more about your work than you. You know, I should be following the actors in the class. If I care more than you, then something's not right. Like, that's not going to serve you in a long and healthy career. I think I'm in a very free situation right now because I'm the head of the school, and it's completely outside the power structure. So it's not part of a university. I don't give grades. None of my students pay. I don't give a degree. I can make up the schedule as I want. So I'm in a very fortunate and interesting situation. So the people who we choose to come here are really, really full of passion to be here. Having said that, the ones who, there are some that leave, that slough off every year because we care. You know, it's clear when the teacher cares more than the actor, that's not going to dismantle any power structure. I think that I'm going off into a little bit of a tangent, but I think maybe it's important is that what I think is crucial, especially right now, is that actors don't think about themselves as actors, but they call themselves makers. I think it's our job to change the taste, also of the audience. And I think it's our job to follow the younger people and to follow their taste and to help them to really break our taste. I mean, I think of it really dramatically that they should want to annihilate my taste because now I'm the old taste, you know? So I try to, now I'm not sure if I'm answering the question because I've gone off into my maker tangent, but I think it's really important to help the student to find their own taste, their own voice. I have them write their own stuff. This started in Turkey, actually, because at Kadir Has, because I got so annoyed by the kind of British taste, like colonializing the Turkish taste, that I started like really just, I ripped up my whole plan and started following, like really trying to follow the students. And I think that is the most important lesson for actors to learn, is that you're in an equal, equitable relationship with the teacher, with the director, with the casting director, and that it's an opportunity to make your own work from your taste and find the relationships that work for you, and not just it's not your job to just please and serve the structures that are in place. And now I think I've gone off on a major tangent, but I hope Scott will now make a clever point about the question.
That's no tangent at all. That's brilliant. But I would say that the thing I loved that you said most was you can't care more than your students. They have to care more than you do about themselves and their careers. So that's brilliant. I would only add to that we teach not rooms, but people in rooms. And so if I've got 20 people in the room, I'm not teaching one room of people. I'm teaching each of those as individuals and trying to tickle away at what's going to open up something for that individual as opposed to another person. And if you do that consistently enough, I find that the whole level of the room goes up because everybody wants to play at that level when they see it happen. We have a motto at my company, at the Impulse Company, which is not original to us, but is important to us. And that's a rising tide lifts all boats. And that idea happens in the room every time I teach, if I do my job properly.
Brilliant. Thank you both. So then, what do you think about the bodily practices in general? What kind of physical practices can help an actor to get strong, resilient, yet at the same time, light, smooth, open, maybe vulnerable, and impulsive?
You don't want much, do you, Aslam? Susan, you want me to start on this, or have you got something?
Go.
Okay.
Well, yeah, go.
Well, I don't have much, so I'll do mine briefly and then turn over. Because in my work, the notion of physical practice is to discover effectively the impulse to move. And there's a very specific point in the training where we come across an exercise where we learn to discover the impulse to move, which is quite different than the idea to move. And when you move from impulse, what tends to happen is the most perfect iteration of that movement happens, because you're not doing it from your head, you're doing it from your body without to the degree possible thinking about things. So I have relatively little to say about physical practice other than that, and I'll let you finish off, Susan.
Well, I mean, it's a really interesting question, because I think it's maybe the hardest thing. It's really hard. I mean, I like what you said, Scott, about that you have to, that if there's 20 people in a room, you have to teach 20 kind of individual threads of training. And I think that's the same with like 20 individual like puzzles of the different bodies and the imprinting that's happened on the body, in the body. I think that whatever you can do to start to soften, I think the most important thing at the beginning is to soften and feel what an impulse is from inside you. And then you can start to feel impulses from, like, let's say outside. I mean, at least this is how I work: inside you and then outside you. And then how do you play with, I call it, what Kristen called it, being vertically connected and also horizontally connected, so that you balance those two awarenesses as much as possible, and learning where your focus tends to go, if it's more internally, i.e. vertically, or externally, i.e. horizontally. I mean, I think that I change my plan every day, every year, with every class. So, I mean, I don't know, everything, I change it all the time. So I don't know, I don't have a pat answer for that, I have to say, because sometimes I think I see there's a lot of students who I would consider damp. And that means like, they go too much into the emotions and too much into like internal suffering, like too flaccid in the muscles. And so I like really try to put fire into them and strength into them. And sometimes that like really pushing against something. And some people are just like, some groups just have this fortitude and have their bones, and they're really, there's like this solid earthy quality about them. And so I have to get them like kind of running around and soft and wispy and airy. So it's not an easy answer, but I think that the point is to not impose things on the body, to not try to make the body all the same, I think there's a lot of practices that try to calm people down, which I do not think are applicable at all for a theater training movement. I mean, I think training for movement is not the same as making your body, like making a nice ass or making your abs look good or looking cute, which is also something that you have to do, especially if you're working on TV. But that's not a movement training for actors, right? So the point is to like I think for movement, it's to take away, to make yourself as porous as possible so that the impulses can flow through your muscles, and so that you can also be changed by what's coming in from the outside. So this being porous, I think, is the most important thing. I think if you're adding a lot of muscles and effort, for most people, although this is not true for everybody, but for most people, that is going to create a barrier between the impulses flowing into you and out of you. Totally. And I consider the voice a part of your physical instrument. I don't consider that as different. So I think that also applies to the voice.
Susan, I want to quote you in future for this: impulses flowing into you and then flowing out of you. Brilliant words, because I think everything you said is really beautiful, and I want to go deeper in the impulses, because you both say it's from what I understand, it's from inside first, and then you connect with the world, outside world, and then it's a vertical and horizontal relationship, as Susan, you said. So what do you think about the horizontal, in terms of horizontal relationship? How can an actor be fed by intellectual knowledge or political background? How can those things be horizontally beneficial for an actor? Or do you think it's completely unnecessary and an actor doesn't need any of that baggage? They just need to be there. What do you think about that?
Can I just say one thing just about because I don't mean that an actor should always go from the inside and then the outside. That's just specifically how I do it in the first year of training. It's just the steps that I do in training. And then once you figure out what your kind of process is, which also changes, I think, all the time. But once you as a professional, let's say actor, learn that, then you go with whatever is happening in the moment. I don't think there's rules about inside outside kind of stuff.
Yeah, it didn't sound to me like that, but
okay, I just wanted to.
Okay, well, does anyone
as the other stuff political, I think that as an actor, if you want to be really good, you should be more curious than almost anybody. I mean, you should be fed by everything. You should care about the world that you're living in now, and you should care about the world that came before, and you should be really curious and have a voracious appetite for the world that you are going to create in the future. I mean, just that.
That makes me cry, Susan. Thank you so much. Scott?
Yeah, I'd add to that, or maybe clarify from my point of view and the work that I do. The underlying principle of everything I teach is this: what happens to you as an actor does not depend on you. It depends on what the other person does to you. What we reduce down to the pinch and the ouch. So if you go to Susan and you work and you develop your instrument, that's a separate craft and a vital craft that I don't really touch on at all. What I touch on is the idea that everything that happens to you is impacted by an external source, and that we work therefore on free response to a clearly observed external stimulus. And the impulse that happens, when I was studying with Meisner, there was a sign on the wall that in the classroom, and it said, "Act before you think," which is just the opposite of what your mother told you when you were growing up. Your mother wants you to look both ways before you walk into the street, but the actor needs to act before they think. And that's the nature of impulse, is that it occurs before thought.
Yeah, can I just jump on that? Because that's exciting. I love these. I love getting into the nerdy stuff. There's something in my class that I say a lot, which is there's a difference between the word react and the word respond, right? So like responsive, I think, is going with the impulse in the moment, you know? So if you can clear away the weeds, let's say physically and vocally, then you can actually be, and it's everything's about the other person. Once you get the steps of the technique or the progression. And so, but if you are really trapped by physical habits, mental habits, emotional habits, vocal habits, then your only choice is to receive an impulse and then react through the same patterns. So like my favorite part of my job is clearing away these intermediary steps so that you can really just like get moved physically and vocally, literally figuratively moved by the other person on stage instead of having that wall between you. So I love that you used respond.
So then, Susan, you said that you work on a student in order to help them respond without their personal habits, emotional habits, physical habits. And then, but there are situations in a classroom where you know that a student is resisting something. You know that they can do something, but they resist, or they're so introvert that they don't feel comfortable enough to open up. How would I as a teacher ask this question to you? So how do you work with these kind of people in a group?
I mean, sorry, because I'm such a nerd about that, but I think that you can never get rid of the person, by the way. I mean, I think because of the personal habits and the personal thing, like that's not the point. The point is to have the actor choose what they want to do. So I think that accepting who you are as a person and like celebrating who you are as a person in the room is one of the biggest points of training, is so that you go like, this is who I am as an artist. And that's really important. Resistance. So I'm gonna edit myself. I'm really bad at this. Going back to I shouldn't care more than you. Well, I don't know how to answer this, Scott.
I'm going to pick. I think I know where you're headed with this, and I agree with you 1,000%, Susan. If there is resistance, it's there for a reason. It's been hard won, right? That person has arrived resisting X because something in their life demanded they did that. And this goes back to the safe space notion and the respect notion of saying, you're giving me everything it's possible at this point. If I can make a safer space for you, if I can address that in some way that's humane and intimate in the sense of I understand you and I understand your circumstance, then you yourself will progress rather than me push you down the road. Is that where you're headed, Susan?
Yes, that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
I go off on tangents. So I was feeling myself go off on a tangent. So thank you.
Gorgeous tangents.
I always say it's well, I mean, I think also the point is like, I'm really, really strict, as the Kadir Has students know. And saying no, I'm really, really, and my Italian students, I'm very hardcore about starting time and ending time and attendance. Because to me, that is the first way that I know that we're creating safety in the room. It's like, I'm showing up, you're showing up, we're agreeing to these boundaries. And so if the student is resistant by pushing that boundary all the time, there's a problem. If the person is having, that's a person asking for help to not commit, or that anyway.
Susan, can I build on that? Aslam, do you mind if I build on Susan's comment there?
I'd love you to.
Okay, thank you. I love that. And I agree with you about the notion of respect for ourselves as actors, respect for one another, respect for the space itself, time, that sort of thing. And it's not a question for me of, it's not a question for me of infantilizing my.
Wait, you went mute.
I don't know how that happened. It's not for me to be the daddy figure or to infantilize my students, because if I do that, I create, I believe, in them a false relationship with their work. I don't want them to be good because I tell them they're good. I want them to have technique and craft that they can take out into the world proudly and respecting themselves. And I think that's all part of that safe space, plus setting a high standard. Can you do better? I think you can. How about it? And bringing them into the conversation rather than imposing that on them.
I think that's really important.
Also, I would add too, Susan, sorry to cut across.
Go.
I would add that as an older white male who runs a room, I am at this particular point in time, not everybody's favorite figure. And I need to be sensitive to that in order to make the room as safe. I recognize it's my responsibility to make a safe and productive place. But I need the participation of everybody in the room for that to happen. Sorry, Susan, over to you.
No. I think both of the things that you just said are really important regarding it's not about infantilizing people, and it's not about establishing a mommy, daddy, children relationship. It's about it's actually about equality and working within the same roles and structures. And in Italy in particular, I know that there are actors who have been fired from the National Theater because they threw their costume down on the floor. And there's a staff of costume people to take care of the costume. But because the director saw the lack of respect to the costume, that actor was fired. And it happens a lot because Netflix has now, I think, moved from working a lot in Turkey to working a lot in Italy. And the Netflix rules are really hardcore. And, you know, they're like, if you can't do it, we'll get the next actor. You know, there's 100 actors in the line. What do you want to do, friend? And so the being very professional habitually is super important. And I also think, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting discussion about being the white person in the room in a different culture, which is how I've lived, you know, the white person in the room, but like the culturally American person in the different rooms has been something that I'm extremely conscious of for 10 years, more than 10 years, but I've lived that for 10 years of having to be conscious of the culture that I'm working under. You know, and not trying to impose my culture on the room, but really trying to to set my cultural tastes and cultural habits aside and really become curious. I wish I had done that more when I was in Turkey, but to really ask more questions than say statements. Let's put it like that.
That's beautiful.
Okay, that's a really triggering conversation, because safety starts from respect and the boundaries of the room, and everyone has to show up on time and be there in order to do the work, you both said. And that's really important. And let's assume that we have this safe space that everyone respects. Then you start to maybe choose to work on a text. And how do you approach text, and how do you work with a student on text when it comes to that point?
Do you want me to start on this one?
No, go Scott Williams.
Oh, okay. The work that I do is sequential. And so we don't get to text for a long time. It's basically the last thing we do in the sequence of my work, of our work. So we do a series of exercises designed to create a musculature for living truthfully under a given set of circumstances, which is our definition of acting. And so we spend the first 2/3 of our year together. Let's say we have a year together. 2/3 of that year are going to be about developing that musculature, that habit, that openness, that responsiveness, that highly observant nature, the connectedness that we think are good qualities. And then we've got a couple of exercises that take you from that place and take those muscles into work. So it's quite late in the process that I get into text. And there are fundamentally two approaches that I take when I get into text. One is an exercise we call breaking the back of the scene, which is the bringing of those muscles into your work with text. Because text traditionally would be a great deadener to all that responsiveness and observing. So we got to figure out a way to deal with text in the larger context of the given set of circumstances. And then secondly, we have to find a way to analyze text that is, respect is the word that keeps popping up in our conversation, that is, that does not interpret, but opens up what's available from the text itself. So there's a kind of two-step process quite late in the work for me of getting into text. Over to you, Hun.
Over to you. It's the same. I mean, I keep fiddling around with the order of things at the school. Again, going from this like personal to the political, to the philosophical, to the, you know. So I mean, in the Linklater work, we start even with like kind of neutral sounds. So it's ha, ha, hum. So you can infuse the impulses, but without the responsibility of anybody understanding you. And it's like kind of pre-language, like below language, below kind of sophisticated communication. Then I have the students write their own, like it's self-generated text. So I do quite a lot of self-generated. Now I'm working on like regional dialect text, like personal poems from the different regions in Italy that the students come from. So it's really like their mother tongue, because I mean, it's the same, I think, in Turkish, that, but in Italian, it's like different languages in the different regions. So there is this standard Italian that I'm fighting. I fight standardization in every way that I can, but especially as a voice person, that is, I feel like, my political act on this planet. But anyway, and then I move into like Ovid. Since I'm in Florence, I move into Dante. We move into a lot of Italian, like heightened Italian poetry, working on capacity and strength. So what I try to do all the time is like, I'm really going from expansion to contraction, expansion to contraction, expansion to contraction, so that by the time we get to Ovid, and we even take a class in an amphitheater, and you know they're running around with Ovid outside in the Tuscan countryside, you know, and Ovid wrote the Metamorphoses on one of the islands around here. So, you know, it's just to get the text really, to get really rooted, to find these Mediterranean deep roots that are very elemental roots. Because when you get to like a very contemporary text, you don't have to work hard, you don't have to deaden, you don't have to put, because you can trust the depth of the roots that you have, so that when you come back to like everyday speaking, you know, I love those actors where even when they're in kind of a shitty YouTube Live, not so interesting TV show, that I love those actors where they're like vocally, you go, oh, they could do this, they could do that, but here they are like this. So anyway, I think I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but one of the philosophies that I really try to live under is that the actor, that my job is to help that. Well, it's their job is to open themselves to the demand of the character, and not to take the character and limit it and diminish it and put it into their personal everyday like habit patterns, vocally and physically. Now shut up.
It's really interesting, this talk, because I always find Meisner and Linklater being quite the opposite, but really similar. Because as Susan said, Linklater work really works on the roots and the opening yourself to the poetry and really raw images first, and then working with mythology, I don't know. But Meisner seems to be quite on the surface, like repetition. But they, whenever I worked with students who have the both views, who had the both training, they say, this is like Meisner, and then they, this is like Linklater. They really find a deep connection, and maybe it lies on the going deeper in the impulses. What do you think, Scott?
Özlem, I think, and I don't know if Susan would agree with this, but it seems to me that one of the reasons that might be true is that we are compatible without spending a lot of time in the other person's territory. In other words, Susan is working very hard to develop one thing, I'm developing another, and they coexist, I think, well, because they don't cover the same territory particularly. But I think all acting training wants the same thing at the end. We want depth and truth and presence and all of the words we throw out there so freely. Would you agree with that, Susan?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing you've said and I've worked with a lot of Meisner teachers. I mean, nothing that's happened has ever gone like, oh, that's totally antithetical to what's happening here.
And then what kind of suggestions do you provide, if any, related to the voice, body movements, space awareness while working on text? Maybe some practical suggestions for students who are listening to us or actors.
That's one for you, Susan. That's much.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I think the first like practical thing. I mean, that's all I do. So I could talk for 8 hours about that. I'll try not to do that, but
you have
I think
quite a lot of time, Susan.
what?
You have quite a lot of time, so feel free.
The first thing is if you have that actor awareness where you know that you're going off track, where you know that you feel really tense and everything's crap and you can't receive anything, and you all you're noticing is your hands getting, I'm doing the same thing all the time, something like that, is just to notice if while you're on stage with the other person, are you holding your breath? Because 90% of the time, that's the first thing that's happening is if you're already out of the moment, I mean, and you're noticing tensions in your body, that's probably the first thing that stopped, is that you've stopped receiving the impulses like through the ingoing breath. So just let yourself breathe. The other thing is to not I don't believe that there are kind of hierarchy of impulses. So I think I think sometimes the actor's truth is as important as the character's truth. Truth being such a jargon word nowadays, but anyway, let's just use that. So for example, there's a lot of time, because a good play is a very heightened experience. I mean, there's a heightened thing going on. You're not there typically are not scenes where you're going like, hey dude, let's go down the block and buy a carton of milk. What do you think? Should we go right at the corner or left at the corner? Do we go to this? But it's not about moments like that. So many times I believe that if you as the actor, if you start to register like personal actor things like, oh, I'm tense, or my stomach is tense, or I'm holding in my jaw, sometimes that's actually the character giving you information. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you're registering habits. It might be the character going, wait, in these circumstances, I'm feeling like there's something I really want to say, but I can't say it. So my jaw is tightening because I know that the energy is going to get so big that I'm going to have to say it, So a lot of times, if you can just get very fluid about what the awareness is and not block anything, like go, oh, I'm tense right now. Interesting. Oh, I feel like I'm about to cry. Interesting. Well, that person just dropped their glass of water, so I'm going to have to do a little dance through that part. Interesting. I'm going to have to solve that problem. If you can just like not categorize things as good or bad or acceptable or unacceptable, or this is acting and this is shit acting, or then it can be, you can open many more doors to the character re-entering you, rather than like making this hierarchical experience of this is when I'm really on and this is what's really good. This is what acting is and what's not. Because actually, I think professionally, 99% of the time, it's just like, how do you solve the problem in the moment when you're acting on camera and there's 20 people behind the camera going like, come on, we're about to lose the light. Like, hurry up. And I have to stay very tender and true. How do I solve that problem? How do I keep opening the door to me doing my work? Even if I'm sick, I'm tense, my boyfriend just broke up with me, I didn't sleep last night, there's 20 people behind this, that all of these things can actually feed you. Everything is a usable energy. And really, if you can just change the mental perspective on it, then you won't experience your blocks as something that inhibit you, but that you can use them to really generate a lot of energy. But the basic thing is just breathe.
So, Susan, that's a question for you then. What do you think about the yoga and meditation breathing techniques?
I do yoga. I do meditate every day. Isn't that amazing? I do these things every day for the past, since quarantine. I mean, since last March, so that I don't lose my goddamn mind. But I don't think that's acting. I think if anybody is asking you to calm down or to control, I think it's a way to control your emotional life. And I think that, you know, your solar plexus, which is intrinsically connected with the muscle of your diaphragm, it innervates the fibers of your diaphragm. If you breathe in and control yourself, you're literally pushing your feelings down, and you're pulling yourself up out of those nasty feelings and pushing them down. And, you know, that's fine to do as a normal person. And that's fine if you want to be a spiritual guru, or that's fine if you want to go work in a bank. But if you want your voice to reflect your impulses, which are intellectual, physical, vocal, emotional, and from the other person, so that, you know, again, there's this being porous, this idea of being porous, it's not going to help you. You know, but again, there's different things there's actor training and there's personal training, and those are two different tracks. So if you want to do that as a person and you're very clear that you're doing that as a person, that's fine. I mean, what I ask my students to, I don't allow my students to work out in their first year of training. I don't allow them to do any of that in their first year of training, because I don't think they're sensitive enough to know it. I can feel myself, if I get too obsessed with like losing weight or having to have my body a certain way, I start to feel that the range of my voice gets smaller. And so then I let it go. And if I do a half hour of Pilates or yoga, let's say, I do a half hour of freeing my breath again, you know, because it's more important to me to have my full 3.5 to 4 octave speaking range and to have my full human expression revealed through the vibrations of sound than for me to have a yoga ass.
I thought you were going to say something and then
me too.
Okay.
Oh, no, I've got nothing on that. That's purely Susan's stuff, and it's gorgeous. I do want to underscore something she said, though. I love the notion that there is no hierarchy of impulse, because if you sit in judgment on yourself as an actor, how the hell can you connect to anybody else? If you're saying, oh, I can do this better, or that moment didn't happen, you're completely taken to where I consider the wrong place to be. And whereas if you can change that version of things and say, that's how I felt, that's what was there. And rather than judging it, honoring it and moving to the next moment, I think there's a great freedom in that.
Wow, that would help many people, I think. Thank you both for these answers. And then after, like, taking from Susan, actor training is different from a personal training for personal development, whatever. But then in this pandemic, everyone could get a bit obsessed with self-improvement because we didn't have anything but 4 walls around us. So there were many courses and stuff. But then what happened to the acting training during this era of being around, being in the house all the time and connecting with our students through Zoom, through screens? I think you both have different experiences, and I would love to hear, like, what was the difficulties, what was the benefits, if there are any, what did work for you, what didn't work for you, which approaches can be approachable. So.
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay. I have been thrilled with how my work has gone on Zoom. And it's been an unexpected bonus for me. It would be the closest thing I can think of is it's like acting with somebody in close-up, in a big close-up. You go into a movie cinema and you're acting with, you know, a 20-foot high self. That's an overwhelming experience. And I keep seeing exquisite work being done by my students in that way. Just overpoweringly beautiful stuff. That said, there are certain things that I can't do, which are related to movement and related to experience in that way, that I have to be in the room with people to do, or at least I haven't been clever enough to figure out how to do that through Zoom. But there's another benefit that I've found, and then I'll turn it over to you, Susan. And that is the international reach of things. So I'm now delivering weekly an acting class in Istanbul, something I'd never thought to do before. And I'm starting on Monday a drop-in class for people all over the world, where we can get, where I'm going to have Turkish actors work with Israeli actors, work with Australian actors. And it's the brilliance of this time that we're able to build bridges in an incredible way and have a deep workout of certain aspects of our acting craft.
I think that's amazing. I'm going to be negative Nancy. I don't like this Zoom. I don't, 2 hours is my limit. My body is really screwed up on Zoom. It's because it's a voice class. Everybody has to mute. Everybody's in their own room. And the thing that I don't like most of all is if I'm dealing with, well, in some countries, is you have to pretend that you're in a professional space. You have to pretend that this is not happening. And that is, it's very disturbing to me and depressing to me. I think if it's like, here I'm in my house, I'm in Florence, I can't even go to my office because we're in a red zone again. You're in your home, you're in your, you know, I mean, I think if we can just go like, this is where we're at and we can't escape from this right now. And this is the truth. This is the reality. Maybe I would have found more peace with it. I don't know. But again, like we rehearsed the play on Zoom. We've done, I've done classes on Zoom. I love because my teacher, Kristen Linklater, died during the quarantine 10 months ago. So the Linklater community, I'm having meetings 2-3 times a week with people all over the world. And so this like finding the human connection again, not feeling so separate and teaching students from all over the world, I think is really amazing. It's like, why haven't we done that before? Why did it take this moment to do it? But again, this is where I feel like really fortunate because I do not have, I mean, a lot of my colleagues in the US are having to teach in their universities like it's a normal day. So I have colleagues of mine who are teaching 3-hour voice classes, 2 or 3 a day. So 8 or 9 hours in a day. And in the room, that's a long ass day, but it's like you get fed by the energy. On Zoom, it's like, it's ridiculous. And so the thing that scares me about as we like very slowly start to emerge from this life experience is that I'm scared about a lot of my colleagues and a lot of people who are kind of denying that we're in this experience. So in my school, my students have now gotten hired by the theater. So they're working right now, thank God, not with any people, they're in there alone. But, you know, I don't have to push like it's a normal time. What we've done is just extended the year. So they were supposed to graduate in June. They're going to graduate, I hope, in December, but let's see when the school gets to open again, because we've been closed for a year. But so I'm in a fortunate position where I don't have to push every day, all day long on Zoom. I don't know how I would handle that. Although I think maybe I would get like you, Scott. And if I had to do it, I would find a way through it, but because I'm kind of in charge of what we do and don't do, I've been able to remain in my resistance egg.
When all else fails, delegate.
Yeah, well, I have. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like this is a life-changing experience. This has changed definitely my life. I know if we all admit it, it's changed everybody's lives. I think next year is going to be amazing for theater. I think 2022 is going to change everything. I think it's going to be the most I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting. 2022. I think the theater that's going to come out of this, the acting that's going to come out of this, the connection that's going to come out of this is, I'm so excited. I hope it makes the 1960s look like the 1950s. And I think we're about to enter a whole new paradigm. And I'm really excited about that. I know that I didn't say anything about Zoom, but I hate Zoom. But I can't wait for what Zoom is going to force us into.
Brilliant. Thank you so much both for this talk and brain enlarging and heart enlarging conversation. So nice.
Thank you for the great questions.
Wow. It's from the entire department, so main is aim. I just want to summarize some of our points to the Turkish audience who doesn't really, who cannot understand English so much, or who was late a little bit. So if you want to turn off your cameras, you feel free to do so. If you want to grab some water. I'll just go through some points in Turkish. Tekrar merhaba herkese. Türkçe'ye geri dönüyorum. Bir garip oldu şimdi. Birazcık konuşmanın ana noktalarından geçeceğiz. Geçeceğim Türkçe olarak. Sorulardan ve cevapların bazı hani üzerine konuşulabileceğini düşündüğüm kısımlarından. Hepsi çok güzel ve hepsinin üzerine saatlerce konuşulabilir. Dinleyen herkes chat'e soru yazabilir. Chat'ten soruları alıp ona göre İngilizceye çevireceğiz özetten sonra ve soracağız Scott ve Susan'a. İlk sorumuz güvenli alan yaratmakla ilgiliydi. Öğrencilerin güvenli ve kendi rahat alanlarından çıkabilecekleri güvenli alanlar nasıl yaratılır ve güvenli bir alanı nasıl tanımlarsınız diye sorduk. Susan da Scott da öncelikle saygıdan bahsettiler. Güvenli alan karşılıklı saygıyla mümkün olabilir dediler. Susan özellikle güvenliğin, yani güvenli alanların her kültüre göre değişebildiğinden ve her kültürde, her sınıfta yeniden başka bakış açılarıyla inşa edilmesi gerektiğinden bahsetti. Ve odada kimin olduğuna göre güvenli alanın değişebileceğinden bahsetti. Ve bunun her seferinde onu bir hoca olarak zorlayıcı ama tetikleyici bir şey olduğundan bahsetti. Hocanın görevinin alan tutmak olduğunu söyledi. Ve öğrenciye seçim yapma alanını tanımaktır dedi. Yani bir seçim yapmaktır aslında öğrencinin özgür olduğu alan dedi. Scott da bunun üzerinden alarak evet yani öğrenciye seçim yapma özgürlüğünü vermek ve o güveni sağlamanın ne kadar önemli olduğundan bahsetti. Sonrasında bir saniye soruları da birazcık daha benim alıp öğrencilerinizi nasıl risk almaya teşvik ediyorsunuz diye sorduğumda Susan öncelikle yani Scott da Susan da bir öğrenciden daha çok hocanın dert edinmemesi gerektiğinin önemini altını çizdiler. Yani eğer öğrenci yeteri kadar önemsiyorsa öğrencinin isteği ilerlemek olmalı ya da derinleşmek olmalı. Yani ilerlemek illa ileri doğru olan bir şey değil. Belki dikey olarak aşağıya doğru ve içeriye doğru olan bir şey de olabilir. Ama önemli olanın öğrencinin seçimi ve isteği olduğu, hocanın onu zorlaması veya ondan daha çok durumu önemsemesinin çok güvenli alanlar yaratmadığından bahsetti. Ve aslında eşit alanları yaratmak ve gücün eşit dağıtımı olmalıdır odada olan dedi. Scott da bunun üzerinden oradan alarak lafı biz odalara değil odaların içindeki bireylere ders veriyoruz. Onlarla ilişkiye geçiyoruz ve her birey için değişecektir yaptığımız şey. Ama bir bireyle çalışmada derinleştiğiniz zaman sanki gelgitteki yükselme etkisi gibi bir kişiyi tetiklemeye ve bir kişiyle çalışmayı derinleştirdiğiniz zaman oda da yavaş yavaş tetiklenecek ve yavaş yavaş yükselecektir dedi. Ve birazcık notlarıma bakmam gerekiyor. İtki bir şeyden hareketle ilerlemek değil, hareket ettirecek itkiyi keşfetmek, hareket ettirecek şeyi keşfetmekle ilgilenmelidir. O da karşı bedenden geleni dönüştürüp, karşı taraftan gelenden etkilenip ona doğru, onunla beraber çalışmaktır dedi. Zeynep birazcık uzatıyorsam eğer söyle, sen de eklemek istediğin bir şeyler varsa ne olur ekle. Sonrasında şeyi sormuştum, bir öğrenciyle çalışırken hem dirençli, hem güçlü, ama hafif, ama yumuşak, ama kırılgan. Bütün bunları sağlamak için ne yapılabiliyor acaba oyunculuk eğitiminde? Çünkü oyunculukla ilgili hep bunları konuşuyoruz hep beraber. Yani biz en azından kendi aramızda konuşuyoruz. Susan, ben önce içeriden başlıyorum çalışmaya dedi. Derinlerde bir yumuşama, rahat bırakma, gevşeme. Ama dedi bu da her şeye göre, herkese göre değişiyor. Çünkü bazı insanlar, bazı gruplar daha böyle ıslak kilim gibi hani yer çekimine daha çok teslim olmaya hazır ve kendini bırakmaya hazır oluyor. Onlarla daha çok iskelet ve diriltici çalışmalar yapıyorum. Ama bazı gruplarda çok iskelet ve yer çekimine karşı hareket eden ve güçlü oluyor. Onlarla da daha çok yumuşaklık, hafiflik ve kırılganlık çalışıyorum. Yani her gün, her sınıfta, her sınıfla beraber, her durumla beraber öğretme biçimimi değiştiriyorum önce dedi. Ve önce içeriden çalışıyorum çoğu zaman en başta, sonra yani dikey olarak çalışıyorum içeriye doğru, sonra yatay olarak, horizontal olarak çalışıyorum. Yani gözümüzü açıp dış dünyayla ilişkiye geçiyorum. Ama en önemlisi asla herhangi bir şeyi empoze etmiyorum. Ben yapmıyorum. Öğrencinin deneyim yaşaması için alan açıyorum dedi. Hiçbir zaman sakinleş demiyorum. Oyuncu sakinleştiği zaman sıkıcı olmaya başlar dedi. Bunu belki daha önce sınıfta söylemiştir, şimdi söylememiştir bilmiyorum. İyi gözüküp kötü gözükmekle ilgilenmemelidir oyuncu dedi. En pure halimizle, en saf haliyle çalışabilmesine yardım etmeye çalışıyorum. Ve itkilerin dikey ve yatay olarak geçişliliğini sağlamaya çalışıyorum dedi. Sonrasında bu itki, yani Scott da bunun üzerinden aslında çok benzer şeyler söyledi. Beraber konuştukları için böyle biraz geçiyor. Sonrasında peki dedim ben, itkiler entelektüel veya politik bakışlar ve araştırma, derinleşmeden etkilenebilirler mi? Yoksa insanın hani orada durup itkisel bir varlık olması yeterli midir? Susan şeyle başladı. Bir oyuncu belki de herkesten çok, yani dünyadaki bütün mesleklere sahip insanlardan daha çok meraklı olmalı ve insan ırkının şimdi olduğu hale, insanlığın ve dünyanın şimdi olduğu hale ve geçmişte olduğu hale karşı meraklı ve duyarlı değil, ilgili, kalpten bir ilgiyle bağlı olması gerekir dedi. Scott da bunun üzerine sana ne oluyorsa dışarıdan aldığın şeyden dolayı oluyor. Zaten Meisner tekniği bunun üzerine çalışıyor. Sana birisi bir şey yapıyorsa başkası yapıyor ve sen ondan etkilenerek dönüşüyorsun. Ve buna cevap veriyorsun. Ve bu özgürlüğe yer açıyorsun. Dedi. Dolayısıyla da dışarıdan etkilendiğin şey zaten seni oyuncu olarak yaratıyor ve inşa ediyor dedi. Dolayısıyla bütün o etkilere açık olmaktan bahsetti aslında. Pardon hemencik. Sonrasında oyunculuğun nasıl etkisel olabileceğinden de bahsederken Meisner'in çok böyle Scott'un çalıştığı zaman öğrenci olarak böyle odada, stüdyoda çok büyük harflerle yazdığı önce davran sonra düşün diye çevirebileceğim. Önce oyna sonra düşün. Önce yap sonra düşün. Yani bir annenin çocuğuna asla tembih etmeyeceği bir şey olarak, yani yola çıkmadan önce bir sağa sola bak diyoruz ya biz her zaman. Bakma yap olması gerektiğini aslında anlattı. Susan da buradan hareketle react ve respond, yani tepki vermek veya cevap vermek ayrımından bahsetti. Çünkü bir kişi itkilerine açık olduğu zaman bu iki seçeneği kullanabilir. Ama kişinin bedeni, ruhu veya düşüncesi katı olduğunda, yani işte daha pure forma geçmek için gerekli egzersizleri yapmadığında veya o anda katıysa neyse, o zaman hızlıca cevap vermek, reaction, hızlıca davranmak olabiliyor yaptığı şey. Ama o tansiyonlar ve kişisel şeyi geride bıraktığında veya çalışmadan dışarı çıkardığında bu sefer cevap verebileceğini anlattı. Sonra şeyden bahsettik biraz. Bazen öğrenciler haklı olarak bir sürü sebepten dolayı geri durmayı tercih edebiliyorlar. Bazı hocalar tarafından kapalı adledilebiliyorlar. Ne yapıyoruz böyle dirençle karşılaştığımız zaman sınıfta diye konuştuk. Onlar da öncelikle işte ikisi de şeyden bahsetti. Yani Susan'ın öncelikle şeydi, kim olduğunu kabul et, ve olduğun kişiyi kutla. Olduğun şeyi kutla. Çünkü Scott da onun üzerine çok güzel bir şekilde şunu söyledi. Bir direnç varsa bir sebepten dolayı vardır. Ve ben bir hoca olarak en fazla o dirence yardımcı olacak ya da onu anlamasına yardımcı olacak güvenli alanı yaratmaya çalışabilirim. Ve o direnç orada bir sebepten dolayı vardır. Belki bir gün gider, belki bir gün kalır. Ama kişinin kişiliğini yok etmek değil, o pure hale gelmek. Kişinin olduğu gibi var olabilmesine yardımcı olmak zaten. Ve odada dolayısıyla insani, derin, özel çalışılabilecek alanı yaratmak. Ve sonrasında şeyden birazcık işte odada nasıl derinlemesine çalışabiliyoruzu konuşurken şu çıktı aslında. Odada en başta hocanın çok net bir şekilde zamanında olması, ikisi de aynı şekilde bu konuda çok hemfikirler. Zamanında orada olmak, her zaman orada olmak ve odanın kurallarına uymak. Öncelikle karşılıklı saygıyı inşa etmenin yolu budur. Öğrenci eğer bu kurallara direniyorsa o odanın içindeki bir problem değildir, o dışarıdaki bir problemdir zaten. Ama öğrenci bunlara direnmek değil, odanın içinde varsa ve bu kurallara uyuyorsa zaten saygı sınırları içinde bir dirençtir ve gereklidir. Onun üzerine çalışılabilir diye konuştular. İkisi de anne ya da baba değildir hoca. Ya da hoca da değildir belki, bilmiyorum. Kolaylaştırıcı, eğitmen, yönetmen, anne ya da baba figürü olmak zorunda değildir dediler. Sonrasında metin, peki dedik, yani bütün bu güvenli alanlar yaratıldı. Metinle çalışırken ne yapılıyor? Scott da Susan da aslında şeyden bahsettiler. Çok hızlıca geçeceğim bundan sonrasını. Çünkü iki yöntem de metinle çok ağırlıkla çalışan yöntemler değil en başta. İkisinin de bir ilerleyişi var. Ve ikisinin de ilerleyişinde en son noktada yazılı tekst geliyor. O zamana kadar itkilere açık olmak, bu itkileri canlı, derin ve köklü tutmak aslında üzerine çalıştıklarını anlattılar. Daha sonrasında bu konuşmanın bu kısmını çok merak edenler varsa eğer altyazılarla yayınlanacak zaten. İsterseniz belki oraya bakarsınız. Çünkü çok güzeldi. Basitleştirip de geçmek istemiyorum açıkçası. Sonra işte fiziksel olarak oyunculara nasıl çalışmalarını önerirsiniz diye sordum. Scott dedi ki ben bu konuda hiç çalışmıyorum, Susan buyur. Susan da dedi ki söyleyebileceğim aslında çok net tek bir şey var. Yani buradan söyleyebileceğim. Sahne üzerinde kapandığını hissediyorsan, orada hissetmiyorsan ya da çok gergin hissediyorsan önce bir bak, nefesini tutuyor musun? Büyük ihtimal tutuyorsundur. Nefesin içeri girmesine izin ver. Ve belki bu tansiyonun farkına var, bu gerginliğin. Belki o gerginlik karakterin gerginliğidir. Metinleri gücünü göz ardı etmeyelim. Çünkü bazen karakter nefesini tutar ve gerilir. Çünkü çok büyük bir bomba patlatmak üzeredir. Sen oyuncu olarak o sırada rahat olmasan da olur. Sürekli iyi duygular, rahat olmak, gevşek olmakla sahne üzerinde etkilenmeyin. O sadece antrenman. Sahneye çıktığınızda karakterin başına her şey gelebilir ve gevşekçe gelmeyecektir. Sonra ve yani bu iletişim kurma biçimiyle bir sürü kapılar açılabilir. Sanırım şimdilik sonra da pandeminin üzerinde nasıl bir etkisi olduğundan kısaca konuştuk. Scott dedi ki bu sayede ben çok fazla insanla bütün dünyada çalışabiliyorum. Bunu daha önce keşfedememiş olmam çok garip. Ve close-up'la, yani çok yakın planla çalışabiliyorum. O yüzden de çok kocaman şeyler ortaya çıkıyor. Çok heyecanlanıyorum. Ama tabii ki aynı odada bedenlerle bir arada olmam gereken durumlar var. Onları bir araya geleceğimiz zamanla bırakmak zorunda kalıyorum. Ama bu şekilde çalışabiliyor olmak da çok şey öğretti. Susan dedi ki ben negatif Nancy olacağım. Çünkü nefret ediyorum dedi sunumda çalışmaktan. Yani ses dersi verip de öğrencileri mute'da tutmak zorunda kalmak, odalarımızın içinde olduğu gerçekliğini bazen işte yok saymak zorunda kalmak vesaire zor oluyor benim için dedi. Ama aynı zamanda da bütün dünyadaki işte Linklater hocalarıyla bir arada olabiliyoruz. Christine Linklater 9 ay önce vefat etti ve Linklater komünitesi bir araya gelmeye başladı. Ve sürekli bu toplantıları hep beraber yapabiliyor olmak en azından tek başıma hissettirmiyor. O yüzden de çok iyi geliyor dedi. Ve ben burada şimdi bırakıyorum. Sizin sorularınıza geçmek istiyorum. Zeynep, soruları sen toparladıysan okumak ister misin? Çünkü ben biraz
Olur. Olur. Zaten bir tane sorumuz var. Çok güzel özetledin Özlemcim. Ağzına sağlık gerçekten. Daha detaylı olarak bu dediği gibi Özlem'in bütün konuşma Türkçe'ye çevrilmiş altyazılarla YouTube'da yayınlanacak zaten kısa zaman sonra. Beyti Engin'in bir sorusu var. Karakter yaratım sürecinde oyuncunun kendi anılarını ya da travmalarını kullanması hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz acaba? A question for you, Scott and Susan, from Beyti Engin. It's related to what do you think about using your own personal memories and traumas while developing a character? Who wants to go first?
I'll take it on, Susan, if you don't mind, because I have bad news here. Which is, in my work, there's no such thing as character. So the notion that you would use personal trauma or in any way personal experience is sort of beside the point. I am not a big fan of what was traditionally called the method because it was not a very healthy way for people to live. And method actors famously create difficulties in the room for other people. And I just don't think that's a particularly good way to work. And that's a whole long topic that we can get into. But I'm not interested in re-traumatizing anybody. I'm interested in a healthy actor in body and mind doing good work. And it doesn't have anything to do with revisiting your own past. You already have inside you all you need to be as an actor. It's a question of accessing it in a healthy and open and vulnerable way. And trauma is not likely to make you vulnerable.
I taught at the Actors Studio for 5 years, and I 100% agree with you. And I think that, anyway, that's for our
that's going to be a hell of a drink we have.
That's going to be our drinking night. I think that this is the most important thing, I think, is that it's always your choice. So for some actors, accessing their let's call it trauma, accessing their trauma is there are certain aspects of that that are acceptable to them to have in the room, and that that feel like generating energy to them. And that is your choice. There are other actors where if a memory comes up or something happens and they're unable to work, they're unable to feel safe, they're unable to make choices. And that is your choice to divert the energy and not go there. My teacher, like from personal experience, I remember very clearly being in my training with Kristen Linklater, and a traumatic memory came up that I had suppressed. I didn't say anything about it, but I mean, she could see, I was having a reaction that was making me unable to kind of work through the text. Let's say I'm trying to speak very generally. And she came over to me and she said, it's your choice. Do you want to go deeper into this experience and I will help you do that? Or do you want to divert the energy and I will help you do that? And I said, I want to divert the energy. And, that is something that I do as a teacher all the time. It's like, do you want to keep going? It's always your choice. Now, having said that, I think there are many directors, there are many acting teachers, there are many voice people, there are many people who try to exploit your trauma, and they think that you being dependent on them, or you crying, or you exposing all of your personal information and personal traumas, they think that that's what the work is. And that is a person who is not interested in your work, is not interested in you as an actor, is interested in having power over you. And that is not that is not acting, that is not teaching, that's not safe. And you as an actor do not have to participate in that.
Well said. Sorunun cevabına Scott dedi ki biz sağlıklı, yani fiziksel olarak, mental olarak sağlıklı, üretken insanlarla çalışmak istiyorum. Dolayısıyla metod oyunculuğunun dayattığı bu kişisel travmaları uyandırmanın bir işe yaradığını düşünmüyorum. Oyuncuların sağlıklı olması gerektiğini düşünüyorum, dedi Beatty senin soruna cevap olarak. Susan da dedi ki bir oyuncunun her zaman kendi tercihidir travmayı ziyaret etmek ya da etmemek. Benim de kendi öğrenciliğim zamanında travmayı ziyaret etmek zorunda kaldığım bir an olmuştu ve bana hocam gelip dedi ki burada daha derinleşebilirsin ya da senin buradan çıkmana yardımcı olabilirim ve o enerjiyi başka bir yere kanalize edebilirsin. Ben başka bir yere kanalize etmeyi tercih ettim ve bu bir tercihtir. Özgürce seçilebildiği sürece de iyi bir yere varabilir. Ama birçok öğretmen veya yönetmen var. Kişisel deneyim ve kişisel travmaların ve duygusal yaralanmaları kötüye kullanılıyorlar. Ve bu, yani sürekli orayı delmeye, sürekli ağlamak ve sürekli o travmadan beslenmeye başladıkları zaman bu sizin oyunculuğunuzla ilgilendikleri anlamına gelmiyor. Bu sizin üzerinizde güç sahibi olmaya çalıştıkları anlamına geliyor. Dolayısıyla da bu güvenli değildir, çalışılabilir değildir, yeniden ziyaret edilebilir de değildir. Dolayısıyla o güvenli sınırlar içinde kalmaz, dedi Susan'da.
Yes.
Okay, there's another. Zeynep'ciğim bir şey söyleyeceksin.
No, I just wanted to ask the other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First, to Scott, your workshops, are they open to everybody? How they can participate to your workshops, Scott?
Yes, the easiest way to do that, it's Mondays at 9 a.m. in London, which I believe will be 11 a.m. in Turkey. And you can go on our website and easily sign up for a class. It's a drop-in class. It runs 2 hours long, and you get to work with anybody. And the website is impulsecompany.org. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. Another question is about the newly graduates. What would you say to them in order for them to survive these years, with the pandemic? Is there any advice that you could give to them?
Work, write, make videos, read, watch everything. Make friends with people, put stuff on Facebook and say, I want a group to rehearse things to get them ready. But I think the most important thing is it's your responsibility. We must hear your voice after this. We must hear your voice after this, this is a paradigm shifting moment. And it's the young people who are just graduating or who are in school right now. It is your world. And your voice is more important than my voice, is more important than your teachers' voices, that you must do the work and put your voice out there.
Evet, Susan kadar güçlü bir şekilde bunu söyleyemeyebilirim ama cevap olarak dedi ki çalışın, her şeyi seyredin, okuyun, yazın, prova yapmak istiyorum diye Facebook grupları açın ama şu bittiğinde bizim ya da şimdi sizin sesinizi duymaya ihtiyacımız var. Duymak istediğimiz şey öğretmenlerinizin sesi değil, sizin sesiniz. O yüzden kendi sesinizi güçlendirmek ve duyurmak için çalışmaya ne olur devam edin, size ihtiyacımız olacak.
I'm so sorry. Can I just add something to this that I think is really important, especially for young people, is that nobody has power over you. Nobody has power over you. And in fact, no, it's not just for young people, because nature has power over all of us, and that's it. So there's nobody out there in the system or in the industry who can tell you that you are a good actor or a bad actor, or that your work is worthwhile or not worthwhile. That if you have a little voice inside yourself saying, I want to do this, I need to make work, I need to do it, you must do it. That is the voice to follow, and not these rather stupid older people who are like holding on with our claws to the old system. Like, pull the claws off, and we must hear what you have to say.
Suzanna. Evet, dedi ki içinizde eğer bir ses, minnacık bir ses bile çalış, şunu yap diyorsa onu yapın. Yaşlanmış hocalarınızın pençelerini size geçirip de eski sistemi tekrar ettirmeye çalışmalarına izin vermeyin. Sadece doğanın sizin üzerinizde bir etkisi olabilir. Hepimizin üzerinde bir gücü olabilir. Hiç kimsenin olamaz.
Yes, and one of the, I think, there are other questions too. What would be the limit of the curiosity? Because you mentioned curiosity is very important for an actor. What would be the limit? I mean, is it a good thing that an actor is curious about everything?
I did say that, didn't I? Well, I mean, I wish, to me, that's a weird way to respond to that. So I'll just say, like, I'm curious, like, I would love to talk to this person, but to me, that's kind of a weird thing to say, because what does it mean? Like, there's so what it sounds like to me is this person has a problem with focusing, and it's not about curiosity in the way that I meant curiosity, but it's about that this person sounds to me like they're afraid of committing to something. Now, do you remember commitment in one of the Kadir Has classes created a big, huge problem? So committing, I don't mean committing in the way that they took it. I mean committing, like really focusing on what the action is, or focusing on what they're doing in the moment. Those aren't the same thing. So I would, when you feel the need to like escape, that's not curiosity. But no, there is not a limit to curiosity if it's in the way that I intended. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Cevapları çevirmeyeceğim, bundan sonraki diğer soruları alabilelim. Sonra altyazıyla bakar herkes.
Okay. Zerrin Yanıkaya asked about the pandemic situation. What do you think about this process? Would it lead to another kind of working method? Would it affect to develop another kind of acting method, or after this ends, we will all continue with the things that we are already doing in terms of actor training?
Do you want me to try that one, Susan, and then hand it over to you? I'm not quite sure if the question is related to actor training specifically, or if it's related to what happens when we open up and get back into the work again. Which is two separate conversations, I think. So I'll try and briefly answer both. There is a miracle that happens when we do live theater. That doesn't happen when we do film, and it doesn't happen when we do television. And that is, we exchange molecules. We breathe the same air. And it is, for me, the truest thing, and how we know we're human, is that we share that experience together, and we are hungry for it, and we want it badly. And so we will leap back into the room together and share the same air and breathe together in a healthy way, I hope. As far as acting training goes, it's my philosophy that acting is subject to fashion and trends, in the sense that what we like in acting now is perhaps different than what we liked in acting 100 years ago. We can see performances in film in 1925 that look to us impossibly false. But a great actor is a great actor. And a Timothée Chalamet is going to be great in 1920 as he is in 2021 because of his level of I'll use the curse word, truth and impulsivity. I think he's a miracle, and he's a 20-year-old who inspires me when I watch him.
Thank you, Scott. Susan, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I love Timothée Chalamet too, but no, I mean, we have to see. I feel like from this vantage point in lockdown in Italy, it's impossible that it won't change. But human testardo, being stubborn. Well, that's weird. The Italian came up first. That's weird. I think the human stubbornness cannot be underestimated. So let's see. But I mean, I think it would be really shocking if things didn't change. And I wait for the miracle of being in a room in the theater and sharing molecules with all of you.
Yes. And another question from Bilgesu Yılmaz. I think this is more to Scott. If the partner doesn't really respond to you, and he or she is stubborn to act as she likes to act, how do you cope with it?
That is a great question. I love that question. There is a difference between having an opinion and having a response. And when an actor sits in judgment on their fellow actors, they are the problem. Your job is not to have an opinion about somebody else's work, but to respond to what they give you. And when you do that, everything opens up. That's it.
Okay, I think it's about time now.
Yes, I think we already exceeded our time.
I just want to translate two things that Scott said. So to have a glorious ending. Tiyatroyu sinemadan ve filmden farklı yapan şey çok büyülü bir şey. Çünkü tiyatroda biz bir araya geldiğimizde moleküller paylaşıyoruz. Aynı havayı soluyoruz. Ve biz bunu yapmayı çok özledik. Ve bittiği anda da prova odalarına atlayıp bunu yapmaya devam edeceğiz. Emin olabilirsiniz dedi. Bu konuşmayı bence bitirmenin güzel yollarından biri. Bence böyle bitireyim. İkinciyi çevirmeyeyim. Çünkü bu daha pozitif bir şey galiba. Okey, çok teşekkürler herkese geldiğiniz için, izlediğiniz için, soru sorduğunuz için, burada olduğunuz için. And thank you so much, Scott and Susan, for being here with us. Thank you, Kadir Has, for giving this opportunity to meet here virtually and wholeheartedly. And
I miss you, Turkey. I miss you, Istanbul. I miss you, Kadir Has. I miss Turkish actors. You're so exciting. I can't wait to be in the room with you again. Çok teşekkürler.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. It was great to have you. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao.